We're more than halfway through the program. I'm here with Phil, who many of you guys have seen before, and he's here to give us a less technical presentation this time on his experience as a founder in the Arweave ecosystem. So if you have any questions, we're going to do the same thing again, where you're just able to ask them in the Q&A section, and we'll stay on after the presentation to answer all of them live. So with that being said, I'm excited to pass the mic to Phil, and we can get started.
All right, thanks, Jesse. Hey, everyone. Good to see you all again. Excited to talk about this topic. It's a little different than normal. I think there was another open web something or other community call where I think I gave some like builder lessons, but it's nice to be able to reflect on all this and provide an updated kind of presentation for everyone around being a Web3 entrepreneur in the Arweave and AO ecosystem. So let's get started, right? My name is Phil Mataras, founder, CEO of Permanent Data Solutions. And at PDS, we're building things for the permaweb, right? Protocols, apps, infrastructure. We operate different gateways like arweave.net. And yeah, today isn't really about our main products like R Drive, which is a Web3, Dropbox, or RIO, which is a decentralized network of gateways. It's more about being a founder, going through fundraising, seeking opportunities, managing a team, right? Today I'm really going to talk to you about my experiences. I do not consider myself an expert. There's still a lot of things I want to succeed as a founder, and a lot of things I still need to learn. But I put together a little agenda here that really covers your first 0 to 1. Or building that initial MVP or your first product, go through some elements of fundraising, tokenization, and I kind of struggled with that. Is that before or after fundraising, since they can relate very closely? But we'll talk about tokenomics and considerations there. I'll share some experiences / maybe guidance, advice on how to operate and scale a team. And yeah, talk about some opportunities in the RIO ecosystem that we're building. So I don't know about you all. I imagine there's probably some technical founders on the call here. I'm certainly a technical founder, right? My background has been in enterprise architecture, mostly on the infrastructure side, a little bit of solution building. My background, I went to computer science way back when, but I didn't do a single line of programming in my professional career. All that changed when I started R Drive, which was around the summer of 2020. So coming up to the 4th year, I kind of went through this process and quit my job and started working on my first 0 to 1. Now, again, I'm no Peter Thiel. I don't claim to be some visionary founder or anything like that. But I found this concept really valuable. Now, for those of you who don't know, going from 0 to 1 means going from nothing to something, right? It's kind of like the biggest step possible. It's bigger than going from 1 to 100, right? Because it's sort of like nothing to something. And this was kind of one of the reasons why I became an entrepreneur, bringing something new into the world. I kind of stopped doing that with my job in enterprise IT. Even though I was working with big systems and doing some innovative things, it was always kind of listening to other people, dealing with demands of the business, et cetera. And I wasn't just doing anything new or creative or for myself. So this concept really drove me to do all the stuff that I'm doing now. And now going from 0 to 1 is more than just coming up with the idea, right? If anything, the idea, maybe depending on what it is, could be the easy part, right? Executing on that is the challenge that all founders and entrepreneurs go through. So before I quit my job in the summer of 2020 and became a founder, I focused on a couple areas around my idea for secure permanent storage with R Drive, right? That was my first app that I debuted at the Open Web Incubator. I think it was in August or September or sometime around that in 2020. And there were 2 areas that I really focused on with my, architect hat, and that was research and development. So research, what do I mean by that, right? It's really the questions that you go through, right? Again, not sure if you guys consider this research, but these are key things that you need to ask yourself. Hopefully, many of you have already asked these or started to ask these questions. But what's the problem you're actually solving with your product or protocol or widget, whatever it is? right? Is there actually a need? Are people suffering from this problem, or do they know they have this problem, right? Why do this thing now? Why is the world ready for it? Are you too early? Are you too late? Right? A lot of times you might have the idea, but you're too late, meaning there's already other people working on it, or it's already well established, or the timing just isn't right. Or maybe the idea is really niche and has a very small audience, or a really big one. And all right, let's say you do build your idea. How do you know it really fits? How do you even know people are using it and it's a success? What does that market fit look like? What are the biggest risks to that idea? Whether it's a risk from yourself or other market forces, right? Identify those big things that could just completely blow it all out of the water, right? Why do you think you're the person to go and do this? I see a lot of people, for example, who maybe go into the restaurant industry because they like to eat food, but they're not good chefs, right? Or they're not good restaurant managers. So why are you the person to build and do this thing? And finally, I think the biggest question everyone should be asking, like, are you ready, or can you go all in on this idea, right? Can you continually defend it? Can you be the one person in the room who doesn't quite get it, and you're championing it? I think that's really important. And I would hope if anyone is seeking investment and that kind of thing, like, you got to be all in on this. There might be part-time founders here now managing other jobs. That's totally okay. This is like the point where you can juggle things and kind of build what you need to get to that point. But ultimately, all founders need to go all in. And if you're not ready to do that, you should rethink what you're doing. So all of these kinds of questions and answers and the research that you'll do to come up with them, all this will end up in your pitch deck in some way, shape, or form, right? And it's important to be really honest about this stuff, because if you're not, you're going to meet investors or other people who they're not going to get it, and you'll just be really mismatched. So important to do some of this research, some of these key questions, when you're at this phase. Next, of course, develop it, right? Build something. I also think that's pretty important. I am not typically the person to sell something or promote something that doesn't exist or is vapor. So I think development, and again, for me, for my journey, was really important to have something and not just have a hope and a dream and a vision. So from my perspective, any kind of MVP, I always recommend this to anyone building on Arweave. In this case, people building something on AO. Your MVP should really try to meet some end-to-end user journey, whether it's an app, even a protocol, sending a token, doing something. It should have an end-to-end journey that you can explain. It shouldn't just be one sliver or cobbled together things that a new person coming in can't fully understand. Another, I think, important piece that none of us in this day and age should be afraid of is running some infrastructure or services to make your product. It's super easy. There's lots of different SaaS and PaaS and all kinds of ways you can run stuff, whether on the permaweb or not, right? So don't be afraid to do that, to support your idea, your vision. And keep in mind, what you're doing now does not have to scale at all. Don't get hung up on it's got to be perfect and scale to X number of users. That could be the vision, to build a system or protocol that accomplishes that. But at this point, if you're really trying to do a smaller MVP, and maybe you don't want to do that, you want to go for something bigger, then in my opinion, it does not have to scale, and don't get hung up in some of the minutia of that at this phase. And finally, the last one, manifest that shit, right? This is something we've been saying a little more. I bought a t-shirt that said it. It's kind of also a throwback to Arweave manifests. And I was like, oh, manifest that shit. That's cool. But it's really my way of saying, like, bring the thing to life, right? Turn your idea into a reality, whether it's your grand idea for a whole new product and becoming a founder, or a new feature you're thinking of adding, or a change to the protocol. A lot of times people talk about stuff, right? It's our job as founders, I think, to not just talk, but be the doers and inspire other people to be the doers and manifest the thing. Don't just talk about it. So another important thing for development, right? Don't think you can't do something at this phase. Figure it out and manifest it, right? And just a shout out to ChatGPT. I'm sure everyone has used it. It's probably no brainer, right? But ChatGPT is this insanely useful tool for a founder. If it was available when I first did the R Drive MVP, it was like this command line thing you ran in a terminal. If I had ChatGPT, no doubt there would have been a UI to that, right? A real desktop UI. I would have saved myself so many headaches trying to learn TypeScript. And I use ChatGPT for writing code, writing tests, analyzing documents, analyzing data, writing copy for tech docs, site socials, naming things. It's hard. You're a founder, you're making new stuff, you're manifesting stuff. You're going to have to name things. What's the name for this app protocol? ChatGPT is great for ideas there, right? And it's also good for a founder to use it like it's your own virtual staff, right? Start a prompt. You are the head of my HR department, right? And then ask it HR questions. Or you're a chief business officer and I'm trying to land this deal. I try to use it for things like that. But yeah, it can be 10x your productivity or suck all the innovation out of you, right? And all the original thought. So use them wisely. I think we're still on the early end of how these AI tools will really shape our lives and how we work. But definitely important for a founder to recognize this, get a license. It will be worth your money for sure. So now your idea needs to generate some kind of value, right? At least I think maybe some of you out there are going completely nonprofit, protocol that, isn't trying to earn anything. But a lot of Web3 founders have to make this kind of decision in some way, shape, or form, whether you conscientiously decide it or not. How are you going to build value? Is it going to be through some centralized thing like a SaaS, centralized SaaS, or a token in a decentralized platform and something that is permissionless? And, in any case or both cases, how will it actually make money or accrue fees or find that product market fit? That's really the important piece. But how you run your team or business, the whole model will be different depending on which path you really choose to go down. Now, if you are going down the tokenization path, it's really important to consider a few different things, right? Because tokenization brings a lot of benefits. It can really enable truly decentralized, permissionless protocols and systems, but there's a lot of big challenges that comes with it, right? Like, you could be open source and SaaS, and that whole path, having a token adds other things, right? First and foremost, tokenizing your protocol, going the decentralization route, you have to be willing to give up control of it. What are we doing here if we're making decentralized systems where you or a team of people continually have control over it? I think it's a fundamental thing you have to be willing to give up if you want to really become this decentralized platform. Getting the tokenomic model correct is difficult, right? There's lots of research articles you can read. I think A16Z has some really good content, Binance Research, a lot of stuff around tokenomic models. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but it's really hard to get right. And there's factors even like just general market conditions that can completely change how people are viewing tokenomics, right? Of course, launching a token has other legal challenges, right? Depending on your jurisdiction. If you're in the US, it's a lot harder. There's other things you have to do. Hopefully some of this regulatory stuff gets better in the next 6 to 18 months. We'll see. But yeah, you have to be prepared to do that. Or you just say, hey, YOLO, take on all the risk and do whatever you want. But from our perspective, we are a little more on the conservative side with some of this stuff because we are US based, right? And then finally, and again, there's probably a lot of other things to consider with launching a token, but now you're building a smart contract. It could be holding some kind of value or doing things with people's money, right? A whole new level of risk and auditing and it's just another element that you wouldn't typically have with a SaaS model. Sure, maybe you could be building a bank and then you carry that element of risk, but smart contracts is just another skill, another type of risk and security piece. So definitely think about these questions. Having a token is not something you need at the start. I think you can always add it in, but it does or might impact your fundraising strategy. So that's why it's something you need to think about now. Maybe to just highlight what we came up with for the RIO network in regards to tokenization and tokenomics. So we have the IO token, which is a multifunction SmartWeave token, soon to be AO token, that powers the RIO network. and the permaweb apps that can use it, some of the apps that we built. And this token really acts as a permissionless and censorship-resistant medium of common value for the network. We couldn't, for example, tie the price of names to something external to the network. So we wanted to build something that was kind of local and more native. For example, one of the reasons why we felt we needed a token to accomplish that. So the IO token has a few uses that we planned, including protocol incentives, staking for gateways and delegates, payment for services like RNS, and we have a few other things planned down the line to further incentivize what a gateway does, right? A gateway also indexes and serves data. So there's other things we want to add that leverage this IO token. If we look at our tokenomics chart or pie, whatever, and you might have seen similar kinds of pies from other tokens or teams. They might have some similar buckets like the foundation or team or backers and investors or airdrops. We wanted to be really, really transparent with who's getting the tokens, right? We've been on a long journey, so we've done a few rounds of fundraising, so we have some backers, right? We have existing people who have been running gateways and testing and have preparing a big airdrop for the community, and have plans to leverage the tokens, down the line to grow the ecosystem and acquire strategic partnerships and ultimately give more out to the community, to the users. So not saying this is the right model at all, right? I just want to share an example of what we did. And again, you guys should be thinking about this, right? As the founder, really, it's your responsibility. How much are you going to give up to these groups, right? What are the groups that you even have in your view, right? Keep in mind, 100% of nothing is still nothing, right? 50% of a $100,000 company is $50,000, but 5% of $1 billion is 50 million, right? So for me, it took a lot of thinking to understand that, yes, the founder, you don't keep all of it. If you're interested in starting that kind of business where you do have 100% of everything, then I don't think these kinds of projects are for you, because you do not see anything anywhere that the founder keeps all that kind of control. So I do want to call out this initial protocol reward balance, which is used to spur our network's reward distributions and make it attractive for gateway operators to participate. Right, so it's thinking about this isn't just from the perspective of who we're going to give tokens to or investors, but how are the tokens going to be used in the future, whether that's to network participants, builders, et cetera. In addition to who they go out to, you have to think, well, are these locked? Is it 100% of everything going out on day one? Or are there certain vesting schedules that different audiences might need to have? Right? So in our case, tokens can be locked, which means they can't be transferred. You can't use them for anything, or they're unlocked. Or here we still highlighted the tokens that we put in that initial protocol reward balance. It's kind of like the inflation, maybe you can see it as that, although we're not adding tokens on the supply every time. And in the end, it's really important to have enough liquid tokens at the start of the network. You don't want to end up in a position where there's very thin supply out there, so people are fighting for the small amount of tokens. Meanwhile, whales and insiders have this big amount that they're just kind of holding on to, waiting to distribute via sales. I think it's kind of, again, do your own research, consult your legal advisor if you have one, but I think there's some good information out there that shows you want more liquidity at the start of a launch versus keeping it all locked and releasing it later. So again, this is what we came up with and plan to do for the RIO network. Really, above all else, when you're thinking about this, you only launch a token one time. I think it's difficult to really recover from a failed launch or losing community trust. So regardless of your tokenomics, you should really aim to launch as fairly as possible to all of the people who are making your project possible, right? If that's just yourself, okay, it's just yourself. But I guarantee there's going to be a lot of people involved in any given project success. So you need to really launch fairly. I know that means different things to different people. But if you don't do this, you're not setting a good standard for the future, whether it's your own personal career or changes you might have to make with the token. And if we aren't trying to provide more equitable distribution and ownership of the decentralized systems we create, again, why are we here, right? I feel like we should aim to be a little bit better. And it doesn't make sense for a decentralized platform, permissionless, et cetera, to have a token supply owned by a small set of insiders, right? So now let's get to fundraising. Again, there's many different approaches. Consult your lawyer if you can on this stuff, if you have one. I can only speak to my journey fundraising for PDS, of which at this point we've done a few rounds ranging from angel to a seed round, and have raised around $19 million in funding. So ultimately, if you can't bootstrap the project yourself, if you can't build something that's starting to make revenue and starting the flywheel organically, you're going to need money, right? And this saying "mo money, mo problems" is definitely true. I didn't fully understand that until I really raised money. And again, in my life, I've been lucky, but never like this at it being a founder and having a treasury and money and problems that exist purely by having that, right? So once you fundraise, you will have more funds to work with, more responsibilities and problems that could arise. So it's important to understand what this means. And right, you will get these problems by basically giving up ownership of what you're building, right? You're going to get a new audience to manage, whether it's a broad community you just airdropped to or a set of investors and backers, right? You're going to be getting more feedback and thoughts around this and price and how is company performing, right? And if you're ultimately a good founder, you're going to feel indebted to these people, right? Ideally, you do, as opposed to who cares about them? I have their money, they'll go away. I don't care, right? So certainly more things come with fundraising, but it absolutely unlocks the things you need to unlock to execute on your idea. Now let's talk about maybe how you go from just idea to something investable, right? What is the investor even going to invest in, right? They're going to expect some kind of structure. Is it a company? Is it a DAO, a governance token? Is it fungible? Is it non-fungible? Is there a vesting schedule? Is there a lead investor, someone who's maybe the biggest so far, who's interested in investing? And yeah, investors are going to expect this. God bless you if you get some handshake agreement and don't have a term sheet defined or an actual deal agreement, for example, that has some of this information. Now, Permanent Data Solutions, we are in the US, we're a Delaware C Corp, so we fundraised in safe notes, sale of future equity. What this means is these are convertible notes that converts to equity on a future event. Like, for example, if we IPO and go public. What this also does is gives our investors a share in anything that PDS accomplishes, right? Whether it is traditional revenue or, I don't know, just the PDS gets acquired. I don't see those things happening anytime soon, but investors still have that upside while also getting the upside of any token airdrops that we perform, like for the RIO network. So it was the safe note investment structure. Let's say when I first started fundraising in 2021, where we really leveraged this, investors didn't quite understand. I don't want to say understand, but it wasn't as common of a way to fundraise. It was very much tokens. That's what they were after. Nowadays, things have shifted. I think this is a more common way to fundraise via a safe note. So again, I recommend looking into this model if it's something that suits you. So really think about what kind of structure, what are they investing in, because they're going to ask. You're going to need it for the agreement. What actually makes a good investor, right? Why would you want one on your cap table? Cap table is a list of all the people who have capital in your company. I guess maybe that's what it stands for, or basically your investors or your team or anyone else that might hold stocks, options, or you can maybe even consider tokens, right? You want to keep track of what you owe to people. But ultimately, you shouldn't just take money from anyone who wants to give it to you. You should not do that. You should understand where the investor is coming from. What kind of teams do they invest in? Is there overlap within sectors? How successful have those teams been? What expertise does the investor specialize in? What connections do they have? That's a really important one. Network is really important in this kind of investor sphere. Some investors are more hands-on, and they might want to meet you often. Some provide good marketing resources or connections to other portfolio companies, or maybe key opinions on Twitter. Other investors are just looking for a return, and they won't say a peep, as long as, I guess, you're doing well enough. So you really need to think about what you need most at this point in your product life cycle, what kinds of investors you might need, and be thoughtful around the type you're engaging. Now, sometimes beggars can't be choosers, right? And you need something. But ideally, you have some kind of filter that you use to pick the best VCs, angels, funds, whatever, that might be interested. Where do you find the investors? When I started, I didn't know a single investor. This kind of depends on you. Everyone is here in this incubator, so I think you're all doing the right thing. This was how I got my first connections, right? But whether it's being a longstanding member in an online community and building cred there, or attending hackathons, going to conferences and pitching yourself, or incubators like this, I think this is how, or could be a way to really get your foot in the door. As a founder, you absolutely need to also flex any network connections, right? I didn't know any investors. I certainly know other people that are leaders and et cetera that I can quote unquote flex, but not on the investor front. So don't be afraid to ask people, not, to see if they're interested, right? And you have to perfect that pitch, right? And you will perfect it over time. So now we are talking a little bit more about the pitch. Another big aspect is, well, how much is your idea worth, right? A lot of different things go into evaluation, right? What's the total addressable market? Again, big audience, little audience. What are the comparisons, the comps? Are there other protocols that are similar to you? Are there other apps, maybe a Web 2 app that's generating so much revenue for this many users? Anything you can compare what you're doing to something else could give an investor an idea maybe of what it could be worth. Or maybe you released a product and you actually have some product market fit. You have users, you have revenue. That's awesome, obviously. Maybe your protocol is built, or you have a white paper, or you're far enough along and have some IP that you can use. Or you, the founder, has put in some of your own cash, right? Maybe some are lucky to have that, and we're able to spend $100,000 on their business's capital to hire people to do some work. Maybe you took on debt. That's certainly an important one that investors should know about, right? That you took $1 million in debt to build XYZ and accomplish this product market fit, right? That could be a good thing, or maybe not so much if you don't accomplish anything with it. Or patents, right? This is something else you don't see many people in our space doing, but the things that could increase or give reason for a certain valuation. And finally, even the team's resume. Have you hired people? Do you have a experience in the field that makes you a really good person to build this thing? You have a co-founder, a CTO, or whoever that can really help achieve that vision. All these things can kind of go into what that first valuation is, right? And with that, and again, it's kind of chicken and the egg here. You could start thinking about, well, how much are you trying to raise, right? This is up to every founder. I don't think there's a necessarily right answer, but it is up to you to come up with this range, right? Because it's my experience. It's not something where you just say, all right, I want to raise this much, and that's it. You just tell everyone what that is in the valuation, and it's done. It's always a range, and there's always wiggle room and flexibility there. But you have to decide how much you're going to give away, how much ownership, right? And not just decide now in this round, but there's going to be things in the future where you might have to give up more. So think about that. Plan for maybe future rounds if you can. How much money do you even need to execute on some of the vision you presented, right? And again, maybe your vision is to, create an open, create an AGI, right? You probably need a lot of money to do that. But depending on that vision, you should look at how much do I have to spend? I need this much to get this far to find the product market fit or to get to this next step. So how much you need is really important. You don't want to get too little. And at this stage, you don't want to ask for too much because you really should try to keep as much as you can at this point. And then, how much do you need to operate for 2 years? So I think this is another important exercise everyone should go through at some point, right? How much do you think you're going to spend? Who do you have to hire? What technology do you need? So really important to figure out how much you want to fundraise. And anyone who's not familiar at all with investing or fundraising, I really recommend watching a few episodes of Shark Tank. They have different versions in different countries where people go and pitch their ideas to sharks. It does not mirror or represent the actual reality of a founder getting investment, especially if you were like me and did it entirely remotely in Web3, right? But it does give you a bit of insight into some common investor mentality and questions you might be able to expect, right? How are you going to defend your idea if someone picks it apart, some of the negatives? How is this going to make money? Why is it valued the way you say it is? What are your current stats? How are you going to get users? So I think it's, if anyone wants to just see a sliver of maybe what it's like to be in a fundraising conversation, watch some of these, and they're entertaining enough. So ultimately you can expect maybe a few months. That's how long it took me, maybe shorter for some people, but it could be a few months of chatting with different VCs, doing your pitch, getting some good feedback about your ideas. If they don't provide that feedback, ask for it. Ask for it about the idea, or the product, or the TAM. Especially ask for it about the price. You don't want to leave a conversation not knowing if the investor thinks it's too expensive or it's too cheap or anything like that. Ask for any other connections or, hey, are you familiar with another investor who might be interested? And definitely get any telegrams or follow-up information, right? Because you're going to want to keep in touch with that person as best as you can. Because ultimately, you're going to iterate on your pitch. You're going to get this feedback. You're going to adjust numbers. Maybe you'll be really fortunate to just nail it on the first go. But it took me a few iterations. And ultimately, it's kind of the way it goes is once one investor signs, maybe they're your lead investor, the rest come a little bit easier, right? So connect with investors, pitch as much as possible, and really get your idea out there. All right, you've received some money. You have a pretty legit project with some now serious responsibilities. You got to execute, got to continue executing, right? And build your team and operate it. So at PDS, I found it really important to create a clear mission and a purpose for us way back when. I shared it on the first slide, it's to get permanent storage in the hands of everyone. And I think the benefit of that is it keeps us focused enough at a very high level, right? Permanent storage, right? Getting it into everyone, broad market. It's, very high level, but keeps us focused on permanent storage and helps the whole team get on that same page. We are a permanent storage company. And we want to get into the hands of everyone, right? So this isn't to say a team's mission can change, drastically change, right? Sometimes you have to do whatever it takes to make something successful and pivot. But without defining a clear mission and maybe some other principles about your purpose or team, I think we as humans might have the tendency to stray from that path. So, we've had this same mission for a little over 3 years at PDS now. And it's something that, I like to start with at the beginning of some meetings and unifies us, right? Getting permanent storage in the hands of everyone. So recommend, once you start building your team, get a mission. Dividing time is a perpetual challenge as a founder. You're wearing every kind of hat possible. You're thinking of what new hats even need to exist. I juggle my time between a few areas, right? I'm a technical founder, so a lot of it, the whole lens I use is just on technology. So, certainly spend a lot of time on tech, maybe not as much time on business development, partnerships, and maybe keeping customers happy, acquiring new customers, that kind of area. Um, and, spending time and looking at the community and marketing, right? Again, I'm a technical founder. I'm sure if my career was around marketing, I bet I'd spend more time on community and marketing, as well as time managing the team, HR, that kind of thing. And then really finding the time for what I just kind of label as personal growth. As a founder, CEO, I feel like there's so many things I still need to learn, whether it's related to technology, the business community, or being a better leader. So it's important to try to find time for that, for yourself to learn, and become a better leader. So it's continually a battle to do this. And again, I tend to favor the technology, maybe sometimes to a fault. So I'm continually trying to push myself in the non-tech directions. So I can grow more. Now, from the start, there's going to be tons of things to handle. Again, roll up your sleeves. I hope you're ready to do it all, right? And if you can't, you have to be ready to delegate or outsource, right, to somebody else who can. So it's important to know when to do that as well, whether it's because you're tapped on time, you don't have the skills, or even you just want to give other team members opportunity to shine. You have to be good at delegating. And here's where maybe a co-founder could help, because it's not just delegating smaller tasks, but handling the other major time sinks that exist when you have a big team, right? Dealing with the finances, payroll, managing treasury, right? If you are holding tokens or have invested in crypto, that's something you have to manage, right? Dealing with taxes, hopefully we're all teams here that exist for more than a full tax year, and something that you need to handle on a recurring basis, or any other legal and regulatory things that come up. When we talked about fundraising, you're going to need some document to sign with investors, depending on your strategy and airdrops and whatnot, but you might need legal documents. Those things take time, take resources to do. And of course, HR hiring also can take a lot of time and consideration. So maybe if we dig into that specifically, right, some considerations for scaling your team. I think one of the biggest things for me that I realized or didn't realize as a founder was spending time in HR is pretty essential, and it's hard. And there's kind of a reason why organizations have HR. I used to think, why do these departments exist? But the first time I tried to hire someone, I really had to think, well, why would someone even work for me? What are the benefits of working at PDS? It's a team of 0 and an idea with not a lot of funding and not a big treasury. Like, how do you get the initial people to that first person to work for you? Something you really need to think about, and start thinking about how you sell, quote unquote, working for your team. Why is it a good place to work? So an important thing when you start scaling your team, think about that, right? Start thinking about, well, what kind of resources do you need? Is it a contractor, someone maybe on a start and end date, you pay by the hour? Is it employee, someone who you really want to get vested in the long term and build a long-standing multi-year relationship with and have them grow with the company? Is it a bounty, some quick piece of work that, you don't need to go through a formal contractor? These are all different avenues you can take. And in Web3, you can find people in those 3 spots easily enough. Think about the kind of role that you need, right? The description. What are the responsibilities, the requirements, kind of experience you need? More senior, more junior? Where, right? Does the person have to be in a certain time zone? What kind of salary range? These things might be apparent to some of you, so I apologize if they are, but it's hard to know what people's hiring experience might be like, right? And again, even mine, I used to work at Fortune 50 company and hired people. I always used an HR department who, would find the people and put together the job descriptions and the roles and all that stuff. So as the founder, you are the HR department. And it's also up to you to not scale faster than you can actually integrate new team members, right? You're going to end up wasting money, having unhappy people, and just cause you to spin your wheels, not getting things done because you're hiring so fast and you're not actually getting someone on board and up to speed. And remember, people are going to expect benefits and policies like PTO, healthcare, stock or token options, stuff like that. And again, you might find people who don't care about that stuff. And if you find someone who's really good who doesn't care about that stuff, that's great. And maybe the earliest hires you can really incentivize with tokens and higher ownership of your company. And maybe they forego things like a good PTO balance or healthcare. Healthcare specifically, we did not start with that. It took us until we actually did our pre-seed round to provide healthcare for employees. So, it takes time to get to that level, but once you really start hiring, people will expect those kinds of standard things. And what I've really learned is that referrals always trumps just going and finding someone off of LinkedIn. So again, use your network. If there are people in the past you've worked with that they'd be great to get on the team now, keep that in mind. But yeah, referrals are always great. PDS, we're fully remote. There's another thing I just wanted to highlight. Remote teams have some benefits. They also have some challenges. The biggest thing for us was we wanted to be remote because we were in the kind of the height of COVID, and who wants to meet in an office? We were around the world, right? So there wasn't one spot we could meet. We didn't have the money to get an office space, right? So some big considerations when you take the physical route. But we've been fully remote for almost 4 years now. And I can honestly say some really good things about it. I do wish we had a physical space to convene on, once a week or something like that. But unfortunately, can't teleport everyone from the team in one spot. But what we've learned is meetings can definitely be the glue that keeps everyone together. Now, you may have adverse reaction to that. Meetings, so bad. But, if you're fully remote and if you're not keeping everyone involved, how are people going to steer in the right direction? So it's important to set up certain cadences to make sure the team is involved and knows what's going on and you can communicate things, right? So we have daily stand-ups where there's certain departments or certain projects will have, an async meeting where we'll just kind of update each other in a Slack thread about a specific topic, or we'll have a huddle and it's open and anyone can just join if they want to hear whatever is being talked about, or we'll set up, private traditional, Teams meeting, whatever. And camera, you can turn it on, you can turn it off. It's not a huge deal for us. We try to make sure we see everyone's faces, but it's not like you have to be on camera all the time because it could be a little exhausting. Now, meetings are definitely tough when they're multi-hour. I think that's where, long work sessions, really difficult to do virtually. So keep the meetings short, sweet, effective, and I do think they could be a good glue. Don't build silos across the team. Again, really important remotely. We're starting something new. Don't start by building silos. Keep everyone collaborating across groups. Build processes when you need them. Don't just create processes for the sake of doing it. If you are like me and you're leaving an enterprise job that follows a lot of processes, don't just carry them over for the sake of doing it. You can define how your team works. So take advantage of that. The start and end times, flexible when it comes to a team that's around the world. It's a startup and you have teams in different time zones. So that means some days you're going to wake up early, some days you're going to work late because you have to communicate or deal with someone who's in a different time zone. Expect that, right? And that's why it's also important to just avoid this meeting overload altogether. There are times when we'll just go in and just purge some meetings that we realize, this is standing, we cancel it a lot. Why have it there? Cancel it if it doesn't have value, even if it's the day of. Mute channels, notifications, whatever messages you need to stay focused. I know it's hard to do that, but this day and age, we're on Twitter, we're in Discord, we're in WhatsApp, Telegram, a million different places. And as a founder, you're going to get tons of messages, especially once you start fundraising. Get used to Telegram, right? So mute the things that you need to and try to stay on top of that. Definitely recommend it. Being mobile does require some additional communication and trust, right? We're still small. It's not like we have somebody in HR who is solely handling the team, right? So it's really my responsibility to ensure we communicate whatever we have to as rapidly as possible, as if we're just in an office and can get everyone together to talk about something different. As a startup, you have to work really fast. So fully remote, you can't just call out to the room. You have to set up a time or say, hey, everyone, let's get together and talk. So yeah, just don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do that, right? And then finally, being remote, a lot of things happen on chat, in a chat room, right? Versus email. And I think the biggest difference is you have a conversation with someone in a chat room. It's there. Other people can read it. So try to avoid what I'm simply labeling as Slack drama. For example, if there's a discussion that should maybe be private around someone's performance, or something happened and there's an adverse reaction, really think about how you go about posting that in a public Slack room, right? Those chat room culture will affect overall team morale and make it difficult for people to communicate, when really chat rooms are like, shouldn't necessarily say just meetings are the glue, but chat rooms are also the glue in remote teams. So try to avoid the drama if you can. And ultimately focus on keeping the team happy, right? Focus on setting a good culture, right? To me, good culture means a place where people feel part of a greater purpose. They feel empowered to be open and honest. They're excited to get to work to every day and collaborate with their peers, right? I want to do that. I want to feel that way about my job. So as a founder, really got to try to conscientiously set and maintain that. Collect all kinds of feedback from your team, right? Whether it's sending out a survey from time to time, or some one-on-ones, or, we do a lot of retrospectives where we look at the last couple of weeks of work and, reflect on that. There's actually science behind science that shows DevOps, and instilling those kinds of DevOps practices in teams actually increases team morale, which is super interesting. There's a book called Accelerate. If people like to read books like that, I highly recommend it. I'll share a link later or something, but literally good DevOps in your engineering teams will make people happier because systems will run smoother, more effective. Really interesting. Set up IRL events when you have to. Again, we're remote. It's good to see people face to face. It just helps build confidence in one another, build relationships. And of course, if you want to keep good talent, you're going to have to provide competitive benefits and reward people for their hard work. Or else you're just not going to have a team that lasts for long. So important to do your research when figuring out salaries and that stuff. Almost at the end. So really another important piece of being a founder is managing your burn rate, right? You're going to do some of this when you go through fundraising, thinking about how much you're going to spend over X amount of time. But you can calculate the cost of your resources, your technology, your SaaS, any software that you're going to be using. Maybe do it over 2 years or 3 years, depending on how far you want to go out. Put it in a spreadsheet, or again, there's probably SaaS tools out there that also can help track this. Put in some buffering for incidentals or things that could go wrong, and try to set a budget for what you're going to spend. Again, not spending for the sake of doing it, but for the sake of executing on your given goals. And then again, it's up to you as the founder to compare what you're spending to what you forecast, right? Are you going over? Are you saying, we're only going to hire these people and spend this much, and then you don't execute on that and don't spend the amount you think? Now, this is the kind of stuff that might be a no-brainer for someone who's got a CFO or finance background. But me, tech founder, it's like, okay, burn rate, some of these financials, this was all new for me. So now the structure of PDS has certainly changed and evolved since I started. Originally, it was just R Drive was our one product. Now we have the beginnings of a full ecosystem with the RIO network. So I just want to talk about some of the opportunities that we have available to builders like yourselves in the phases that you're in now. So to be transparent, I just wanted to define what I simply call the founding teams in the RIO ecosystem. Because this is another thing that we had to really figure out, right? And we came up with this structure after months of deliberation and guidance from our legal counsel, Tim Bucher. And we put these pieces together to bootstrap what we hope to be is a diverse ecosystem that will probably take years to grow, but starting with this good foundation. So we have Permanent Data Solutions, and we're the independent software developer, right? We're responsible for developing the RIO network, and we'll continue to independently create software solutions that interact with Arweave, RIO network, and whatever else relating to getting permanent storage into the hands of everyone. So while PDS contributes to like the network's development and protocol development, it's the RIO Foundation, which is exclusively tasked with advocating for the network's health. Now, the foundation is a stichting, I don't know, probably not pronouncing that right, which is a nonprofit foundation set up in the Netherlands. And RIO Labs is the was created to execute the goals of the foundation by providing grants, establishing partnerships, marketing initiatives, publicity initiatives. And it's really the foundation that holds a non-revocable and exclusive license to promote the development of the network and prioritize the ecosystem's well-being, particularly the users, right? That's what we care about the most. So these pieces are in place to support some of the things that we have going on. Like, for example, some of our grants programs. So some of you may already have things like RNS names. We can certainly supply test tokens to buy an RNS name for your project or just for you, right? Remember, an RNS name could apply to any piece of data on Arweave, a wallet or identity, or even an AO process. And we're just about to finish our AO migration in the upcoming weeks. So a lot of exciting things coming for RNS. But we can certainly support you guys with anything around RNS, as well as anything around the RIO network itself and joining a gateway. So gateways are the main infrastructure piece that's doing the indexing and serving and caching of data. The testnet's been operating for a while now. If you're really interested in deploying one of these for your own projects or just to support the perm web, happy to get you involved. So let me know if you're interested in that. If you're interested in running a gateway at a higher level of scale and really trying to promote and grow the RIO network, we're offering a gateway operator incentive program, which is an amount of tokens that we grant to the gateway operator, and then an additional loan of tokens we provide to help them increase their status on the network. So that's really for operators who want to involve at a bigger scale. And then there could be other grants for any teams offering to improve any of the capabilities on the RIO network. So if anyone's interested in this, happy to talk with them, or even if you just need storage credits, right? We operate RDrive Turbo, which is a bundling and upload service. So if you're a new team looking to upload some data, don't want to or aren't ready to buy AR or spend any money, we could look to maybe offer you some credits to get you some free uploads. So please let me know if you're interested in the Turbo Launchpad. So that's it for me, guys. Thank you for listening. Again, I hope this information was useful. By no means do I consider myself an expert, so I might be wrong in some areas, but please let me know if you have any questions. I'll be at Arweave Day in Berlin next week, so if you're around, I'd love to say hi. Join our Discord, follow us on Twitter. And yeah, thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you, Phil. I think everyone's going to find that really informative. I think you answered a lot of questions that I know that I've been getting on some of my calls with some of the people in here. So we'll do questions now. We have a lot of questions. Here, I'll just get us started. So I'll read them out to you. So did you hire your first team member after raising initial funding or before? And did you promise them equity instead of salary?
So first team member I hired was a contractor that I found online for a very low rate. I had looked at like I might even have found him off of like Fiverr or a service like that. And because it was a contractor, I didn't offer any equity. And that was good because they flaked out and ghosted me after a while. The first like real contractor I hired who gave some serious contributions to RDrive, absolutely gave him both equity and tokens as well, as an offset for maybe a lower rate, right? Because you're not going to be able to afford a lot. And this was after the first angel investment round that we received after our AO, or after the incubator that we first did. So I did not hire anyone until I had some kind of funds. Did all the work myself.
I agree with I agree with consulting with a legal advisor for a token launch. How do you find a good advisor? We're based in Ireland, and that sort of advice doesn't exist here.
That's a really tough one. Our team was joking about this before, but I got really lucky finding our legal counsel, someone with really good experience in crypto. It was via an investor recommendation. So I didn't have anyone in our first round. It was actually through some of the guidance of the Arweave incubator that provided, that first example agreement. So I didn't have any legal guidance at that time. Absolutely should have. Would not recommend doing that. And there was some cleanup and things we had to do after, once we did get a better agreement. Um, but yeah, stress the flex your network. I keep saying that. As you start meeting investors, ask around. I did ask specifically our lawyer. I was like, "Hey Tim, are you open to taking any new clients?" I'm sure people ask. He said no specifically, but yeah, that's maybe all the advice I can give. We just got really lucky, and it is an important thing. I don't want to say like, yeah, you don't need a lawyer, but you absolutely do in this space. And yeah, I wish I had better recommendation for you. Sorry.
What if your project doesn't have a problem that it's solving? For instance, a video game, not particularly revolutionary and
Okay.
future earnings potential is entirely speculative based on how popular you can make the game and for how long. How would you
Yeah.
approach investment meetings and valuations?
Yeah. Really good question. And I guess to that point, right, it's not all about solving a problem. There's entertainment that people can get. It's not about just fixing a problem. Um, so that I would, highlight why that game. How is it different? How is Web3 making it different and better than a non-Web3 game? Um, is it a rehash of a tower shooter, or is it something that, yeah, is better and can attract this amount of users that could pay this much in monthly fees or however kind of revenue model maybe you're looking at, or tokenization model. So it all kind of depends, I guess, on how that game, and it's not fixing a problem, but how's it really going to entertain people, right? What makes it different? Maybe I would think more about that. Um, but yeah, really good question.
Solving the problem of entertaining people, I suppose.
Yeah, like how do you find the user? How are you going to market it? What makes it different? What makes it cool? It's a community around it. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, like my perspective with games on Web3 is maybe still like coming back to the problem. What does a game on Web3, what problem does that solve? Right. So if it's purely for like, I imagine you're doing it more than just entertainment. You're building it on AO or Arweave in some way, shape, or form. Why? That's solving something, right? So maybe talk about that piece too.
Right. What are your opinions on choosing the business model, SaaS first token, for open source projects? If a project is entirely public, does not include patentable design slash otherwise has a shallow or no technical moat, is it a stronger fit to go the tokenization route rather than trying to sell it as a SaaS?
So yes, if you're not going to run the software like a SaaS, if you're just going to develop it and then not run it at a certain scale or try to, yeah, sell it as a SaaS, tokenization is definitely the way to go. Um, I think so. And we kind of struggled with that, right? We started with our drive in the first open web incubator. We're like, just make a token and it's in our drive and it's giving out tips, and it still does that exact same thing today, right? It has not changed at all. Um, but I did not give it some of the levels of thought that I just shared with you guys. And maybe it would have been different if we looked at it from just pure SaaS. It's still open source, but you know there's a tipping mechanism, or now we have Turbo, which is open source software that we're running at scale, which you can pay to use or run it yourself. So it's, yeah, I think the tokenization can definitely fit if done correctly, and open source software is, yeah, it's such an important part to the whole decentralization, permissionless aspect, as well as, in my opinion, just being transparent with the community that you're selling your stuff to. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question. These are good questions. I
How
love
was the trend? Yeah, they're good. They're good. How was the transition from small startup to nonprofit foundation and several for-profit organizations? We're working on something that would be a public good, so very curious about this.
Yeah. So really, really good question. So the transition was slow because really the purpose of doing it was for the RIO ecosystem, which is taking us a long time to launch the token and the main net. So you know it's taken us a bit to make it fully functional. The foundation doesn't have anything to do right now because there's no IO token, right? So it's maybe a little slow. It certainly took me a bit to fully understand the point of these um, and the model. Once it clicked, again, our lawyer was really great with setting up some of these things. You got to do stuff with like your passport and with uh, getting stuff notarized, right? So there's stuff the founder has to do, and yeah, transition wise, it's just been a learning experience, right? For example, on PDS, there's no board. For the foundation, we have board meetings once a month, and it's a really small group of people. So that's something I'm learning again, how to be the chairman of a board. Maybe in a couple of years, I'll have some lessons learned on that. Um, but yeah, slow going transition. It takes a bit to get stuff signed. Takes a bit to get stuff like, again, we're in the US. You have to get a virtual office in Amsterdam in the Netherlands, right? So yeah, I would happy to talk to you a little bit more about it, Ron, afterwards if you want. Take more questions.
And then last question, a couple of people were just interested if you could share the link to your slides. If you don't have
Yes,
that now, we can also just put that in the description on YouTube.
I could. I don't have it this very second.
I'll grab it from you.
I could
I'll
put
grab
it
it from
into a
you later.
PDF. Yeah, slap it on our Weave, or yeah, send it to you. But yeah, happy to share that. You can look through some of my notes. Do you have some notes in there? But yeah, again, sorry I didn't provide like links to things you can read, but like the Accelerate book or whatever. But and reach out to me if you did want any other information about some of the topics presented.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much, Phil. Thank you, everybody else, for being here and answering and asking these great questions. We'll be hosting keynotes number 8 and 9 next week. So look out for an email for me to register for those. So thank you, Phil. Thank you, everyone, for being here. And as always, we're really excited to see the projects you guys build and hope to support you in building out the Perm Web. See you guys later.
See you guys. Good luck.